The radio transmission crackled through the Tactical Operations Center at 0847 hours, broken and desperate. Charlie 6 to any unit. We are taking precision fire from multiple positions. 3 casualties. Can't move. Can't get a fix on shooters. They're invisible. They're everywhere. Captain Morrison's voice fractured with stress as another round punched through the wall behind him, missing his head by inches. The sound of impact transmitted clearly through the radio, too close. 15 miles away in the fortified command center, Lieutenant Colonel Jessica Morgan stared at the digital map showing Charlie Company pinned down in a Syrian border town. Red markers indicated their positions scattered across 3 buildings surrounding an intersection they'd been tasked with securing. Intelligence had suggested minimal resistance. Intelligence had been catastrophically wrong. Morgan's eyes narrowed as she studied the tactical display. Morning sunlight streamed through narrow windows, catching dust particles in the air. Outside, the desert landscape shimmered with heat, but inside the TOC, the air conditioning hummed steadily, creating an artificial calm that belied the life-and-death situation unfolding on the screens before them. "Where the hell are these shooters?" she demanded, her voice tight with controlled urgency. The intelligence officer pulled up thermal imaging captured 30 minutes earlier by a Reaper drone that had since been reassigned to another sector. "Ma'am, we count at least 6 enemy snipers in elevated positions covering the entire intersection." He pointed to buildings marked in yellow. "They've got interlocking fields of fire, professional positioning, military-grade optics. They're not ISIS. These are trained professionals, Syrian special forces or Russian contractors. Maybe both." Morgan's jaw tightened. "Counter-sniper assets. We've got 3 Marine Scout snipers in the area, ma'am," the operations officer replied. "But they've been trying for 40 minutes. These enemy shooters are too good. Every time our guys get a position, they take fire and have to displace. We can't get a beat on them." Another transmission cut through the room. "Charlie 6, another man down. Leg shot bleeding bad. We need these snipers eliminated now or we're all dead." The tactical display showed the dire situation clearly. Charlie Company was trapped, bleeding, running out of time. 18 men pinned down, unable to advance, unable to retreat, their medevac route completely cut off by invisible killers who seemed to anticipate their every move. Morgan looked at the only other person in the room who hadn't spoken yet. Staff Sergeant Alexandra Reynolds sat calmly at a corner workstation, studying the tactical feed with the focused intensity of someone reading a map before a pleasant hike. 26 years old, 5'6", compact athletic build, dark hair pulled back in a tight regulation bun, brown eyes that missed nothing, no expression showing the thoughts running behind them. She'd been attached to the TOC as an observer from Special Operations. Her actual unit and background classified so heavily that even Morgan only knew she was some kind of sniper with a very interesting resume. "Reynolds," Morgan said, "you've been watching. What do you think?" Alexandra stood, walked to the tactical display, studied it for exactly 8 seconds, then turned to face the colonel. "Ma'am, those enemy snipers are good," she said, voice calm and measured. "Well-trained, disciplined, professional. They're using a textbook multi-sniper Overwatch pattern, probably trained by Russians. Definitely not amateurs." She paused. "But they're not unstoppable. They're just used to fighting people who don't know how to hunt snipers." Morgan leaned forward, desperation and hope warring in her eyes. "Can you stop them?" Alexander's expression didn't change. "Yes, ma'am, all 6. Give me 18 minutes." The room went silent. Officers exchanged glances, some skeptical, others hopeful. Someone coughed nervously. Finally, Morgan spoke. 18 minutes. Staff, Sergeant. 3 Marine Scout snipers have been trying for almost an hour." "With respect, ma'am," Alexandra was already moving toward the door. "I'm not a Marine Scout sniper." She paused at the threshold. "I need immediate high-low transport to grid November 74 rifle and optics from the armory, and direct comms to Charlie 6 so I can coordinate. Clock starts when I'm on the ground." Morgan made a decision. "Go. Show me what unstoppable really looks like." The Black Hawk helicopter cut through the morning air rotors, thundering, as Alexandra checked her weapon one final time. The modified M110 semi-automatic sniper system felt like an extension of her body. Schmidt and Bender scope suppressor to reduce her signature, and a drag bag containing 200 rounds of 7.62mm match-grade ammunition. Everything she needed, nothing she didn't. The mountains of Montana had shaped Alexandra Reynolds long before the Army ever got hold of her. Growing up as the daughter of John Reynolds, a retired Delta Force operator who had taught her to shoot before she could ride a bike, the wilderness had been her classroom and wildlife her first targets. Those lessons in patience, observation, and predicting behavior would save 18 lives today. As the helicopter banked toward the landing zone, Alexandra's mind drifted back to her 12th birthday. Her father had taken her on her first deer hunt in the Bitterroot Mountains, 3 feet of snow on the ground and temperatures well below freezing. They had tracked a 10-point buck for 6 hours following subtle signs that would be invisible to untrained eyes. A disturbed patch of snow, a broken twig, the spacing of tracks indicating the animal's pace and state of mind. "You're not hunting the deer you see," her father had told her, breath visible in the mountain air. "You're hunting the deer you don't see. Understand what he's thinking. Predict where he'll be. That's how you find him." When they finally spotted the buck across a ravine, her father hadn't let her shoot. Instead, he'd made her watch the animal through binoculars for an hour, studying its behavior, its patterns, the way it moved, and scanned for danger. "What did you learn?" he'd asked afterward. "He checks his back trail every 14 steps, she'd answered. "And he always pauses before entering a clearing, looks left first, then right." Her father had nodded, eyes crinkling with pride. "Next time, where would you position yourself?" "Northeast Ridge," she'd answered without hesitation. He'd never looked there first. 2 days later, they'd returned to the same area. Her father had positioned them exactly where she'd suggested. The buck had appeared precisely as she'd predicted, following the same pattern, checking its back trail, pausing at the clearing's edge, looking left first. Her shot had been clean, humane, perfect. Not because she was an exceptional marksman at 12, though she was, but because she had understood her target better than it understood itself. The helicopter touched down on a rooftop 3 blocks from where Charlie Company was pinned. Alexandra stepped out, crouching low beneath the rotors. The pilot gave her a thumbs up. He'd wait for her signal, ready to extract within 30 seconds of her call. She moved to the roof edge, set up a hasty position behind an HVAC unit, and keyed her radio. "Charlie 6, this is Overwatch. I'm on station." "Sit rep." Captain Morrison responded immediately, his voice steadier now that help had arrived. "Overwatch, we have 18 men pinned in 3 buildings around an intersection. We've taken 7 casualties. 3 killed in action, 4 wounded. Enemy snipers have us completely locked down. We can't move without taking fire." "Copy," Alexandra replied, already scanning through her scope. "I need you to mark enemy firing positions every time they shoot. Use smoke if you can see the building. Verbal grid if you can't. Roger, but these guys are ghosts. They shoot and displace. We never see muzzle flash, never get a solid position." Alexandra was already scanning through her scope. The intersection below was a kill zone, open ground with multiple elevated positions overlooking it from all sides. She could see why Charlie Company was trapped. 6 enemy snipers with coordinated fields of fire could dominate this entire area. But she was looking for something specific, patterns. "Charlie 6, next time someone shoots, I need immediate direction. Don't worry about precision, just general area." "Copy." 30 seconds later, a Marine tried to cross an alley. A single shot cracked out. The Marine went down, clutching his shoulder. "Northeast sector, 3-story building, top floor," Morrison reported instantly. Alexandra's scope swept to the building. She didn't see the shooter. He was already displaced, but she saw what she was looking for, a broken window that had been intact in her initial scan. The sniper had fired from there, then moved. She marked the position mentally and kept scanning. Over the next 5 minutes, 4 more shots rang out. Each time, Alexandra tracked the general direction, studied the aftermath, built a mental map of enemy positions. Most counter-snipers would try to spot the shooter and engage immediately. Alexandra was doing something different. She was analyzing the pattern of their coverage, understanding their tactical deployment, figuring out their coordination. After 5 minutes, she had what she needed. "Charlie 6, I have pattern recognition on enemy positions," she reported. 6 shooters positioned in buildings, creating interlocking fire. They're rotating, one shoots, others cover. Shooter displaces to backup position. Professional tactics, probably Russian trained. "Can you engage them?" Morrison asked, hope creeping into his voice. "Affirmative. I need you to do something for me. In exactly 60 seconds, I need someone to attempt crossing that intersection from Building 2 to Building 3. Just an attempt. Get visible, then get back to cover fast. You want us to draw fire? The disbelief was evident in Morrison's voice. I want them to reveal themselves. 1 minute. Alexandra moved to a different position on a rooftop set up behind a concrete ledge and ranged the distances to 6 buildings she'd identified as probable enemy positions. 680 meters to the northeast building, 720 to the northwest, 640 to the east, 710 to the southeast, 695 to the south, 750 to the west. She adjusted her scope, calculated for wind and elevation, and waited. 60 seconds passed. A Marine burst from Building 2 sprinting toward Building 3. Immediately, 2 shots cracked out, one from the northeast, one from the southeast. The Marine dove for cover unharmed. Alexandra's scope was already on the northeast building. Third-floor window partially obscured by curtain. She saw the faint outline of movement, someone repositioning after firing. She didn't fire. Not yet. She shifted to the southeast building, second-floor window with broken glass. Their movement behind an interior wall, visible only as a shadow. She didn't fire at that one either. Instead, she keyed her radio. Charlie 6, I have visual on 2 enemy positions. Do not move yet. I need to confirm all 6 before I engage. Overwatch, we don't have time. 3 more minutes, trust me. Alexandra understood something most people didn't. Engaging one sniper would alert the others. She needed to identify all 6 positions before she started shooting, then eliminate them in rapid sequence before they could react and reposition. This wasn't about being a good shot, though she was exceptional. This was about understanding sniper psychology, predicting behavior, and disrupting coordination. During her Special Operations Target Interdiction course, SOTIC training, the most advanced sniper program in the American military, Alexandra had graduated with the highest scores in her class. But what made her different wasn't technical skill. It was her ability to think like her targets, to understand the tactical psychology of enemy snipers, to get inside their decision-making process and predict their next move before they made it. In 6 years of operations across 3 continents, she'd eliminated 42 high-value targets. All confirmed kills, all at extreme range, most of them enemy snipers or commanders who thought they were untouchable. Today, she'd add 6 more. Her instructors had called it an almost supernatural ability to predict enemy sniper behavior and positioning. Her Delta Force evaluator had written that she thinks like the enemy better than anyone we've ever seen. Her last unit commander had described her as the most effective counter-sniper asset in the U.S. military. It wasn't supernatural, it was pattern recognition and tactical prediction refined through thousands of hours of practice. The kind of deep understanding that comes from being raised to think like prey in order to become a better predator. Charlie 6, I need suppressive fire on the northeast building, 3rd floor, Alexandra instructed. Spray the windows. Make them think you were trying to hit them. Don't actually expose yourselves. Just shoot from covered positions. Copy, engaging now. Rifle fire erupted from Charlie Company's positions. Rounds sparked off the northeast building. The enemy sniper there would be taking cover focused on the incoming fire, which meant he wouldn't see Alexandra. Her scope settled on the 3rd floor window. She could see the shape behind the wall now, someone crouching, waiting for the suppressive fire to stop. She fired. The suppressed M110 cracked quietly. Through her scope, she saw the impact. Center mass. The enemy sniper jerked and fell. 1 down, 5 to go. The other enemy snipers didn't know yet. The suppress shot, the ongoing noise of Charlie Company's fire, the fact that their comrade was inside a building they couldn't know he was dead. Alexandra was already transitioning to her next target, southeast building, 2nd floor. That sniper would be watching the Marines looking for someone to expose themselves. She ranged the distance, 710 meters, and settled her crosshairs on the dark window. She waited. Patience was the sniper's greatest weapon. 15 seconds passed, then she saw it. Slight movement as the enemy sniper shifted position, adjusting his aim. She fired. The round crossed 710 meters in less than a second and punched through the window. The shadowy figure collapsed. 2 down, 4 to go. Clock running, 7 minutes elapsed. Now it got harder. The remaining 4 snipers would start to notice their teammates weren't responding on radio. They'd get cautious, suspicious. Alexandra needed to work faster. Charlie 6, smoke the intersection, she ordered. Every grenade you've got. Copy. Smoke grenades deployed. White clouds billowed across the open ground. The intersection disappeared into thick fog. The enemy snipers would be trying to see through it, watching for Marines attempting to move under cover of smoke. Alexandra used the distraction. She moved to the opposite side of her rooftop, set up a new position with a different angle. From here, she had clean sight lines to 3 of the remaining 4 enemy positions. Northwest building, 720 meters. She'd seen muzzle flash from there earlier. Top floor, corner room. Her scope swept the windows. Their curtain moving, someone inside checking the smoke situation. She fired. The round penetrated the curtain. Behind it, someone fell. 3 down, 3 to go. 10 minutes elapsed. The enemy snipers knew something was wrong now. Their teammates weren't answering radio calls. The tactical situation was changing. Alexandra saw the next one make a mistake. East building, 640 meters. A figure appeared in a window for just a moment, probably trying to reposition to a different room. Alexandra was ready. She fired the moment she saw movement. The figure dropped. 4 down, 2 to go. 12 minutes elapsed. The remaining 2 enemy snipers were professional enough to realize they were being hunted. Alexandra saw them executing textbook counter-sniper procedures, staying away from windows, using interior rooms, trying to break line of sight. But they made a tactical error. They tried to exfiltrate. South building, 695 meters. Alexandra saw a figure moving rapidly through a hallway visible through connected windows. Someone trying to reach a stairwell to escape. She tracked the movement, led the target, and fired. The figure stumbled and fell in the hallway. 5 down, 1 to go. 14 minutes elapsed. The last sniper was the smartest. West building, 750 meters. The longest shot, the most difficult position. He'd stayed completely hidden, hadn't taken a shot since Alexandra had started her counter-sniper operation. He was waiting, hoping Alexandra would think he'd already escaped, would move on, and give him a chance to slip away. Alexandra knew he was still there. She could feel it. A professional sense developed over years of hunting people who were hunting others. She studied the West building through her scope. 4 floors, multiple windows, dozens of possible positions. Finding one person in there who was actively hiding would take time she didn't have. So she didn't try to find him. She made him find her. Charlie 6. I need a distraction, she said. Send someone into the intersection. Full run across open ground. Overwatch, that suicide. If there's still a shooter, he won't shoot your man. He'll be watching for me. Trust me. Silence, though. Then, moving. A Marine burst from cover and sprinted across the smoke-filled intersection, fully exposed, moving fast. Alexandra wasn't watching the Marine. She was watching the West building through her scope, scanning windows in a specific pattern, focusing on positions that would have good observation on her rooftop. Their 4th floor window with a partially open shutter, the faintest glint of light on glass. A rifle scope catching the sun. The enemy sniper was doing exactly what Alexandra had predicted. He wasn't shooting at the exposed Marine. He was looking for the counter-sniper who'd killed his 5 teammates. He was hunting Alexandra. She smiled slightly. Amateur mistake. You don't hunt someone who's already hunting you. Her crosshairs settled on the window. 750 meters, longest shot of the engagement, upward angle. Wind pushing left to right about 8 miles per hour. She adjusted for all variables, found her natural respiratory pause, and squeezed. The M110 fired. Through her scope, she saw the window shatter. The glint disappeared. A moment later, a rifle fell from the window and clattered to the street below. 6 down, 0 to go. 18 minutes, 12 seconds, from wheels down to last shot. Alexandra keyed her radio. Charlie 6, all enemy snipers neutralized. You're clear to move. Confirmed by attempting intersection crossing. 30 seconds of silence. Then a Marine cautiously stepped into the intersection. No shots. He walked all the way across. Still no shots. Captain Morrison's voice came back, disbelief evident. Overwatch. Intersection is clear. No fire. How many did you get? All of them. 6 confirmed. 6 in 18 minutes, Morrison breathed. How the hell? Pattern recognition, tactical prediction, and patience, Captain. Alexandra replied, already packing up her equipment. They were good, but they were trained to fight people who react. I hunted them instead. Back at the TOC, Lieutenant Colonel Morgan reviewed the helmet cam footage from Charlie Company and the after-action report. 6 enemy snipers, all confirmed, killed by precise long-range fire, eliminated in 18 minutes and 12 seconds, by a single counter sniper who'd studied their pattern and systematically taken them apart. Alexandra sat across from her, cleaning her rifle with the methodical precision of someone who'd done it 10,000 times. Staff Sergeant Reynolds, Morgan said slowly, I've been in the military for 22 years. I've worked with scout snipers, Delta snipers, SEAL snipers. What you just did, I've never seen anything like that. They were well-trained but predictable, ma'am, Alexandra replied, not looking up from her weapon. They used a standard Russian multi-sniper overwatch doctrine, interlocking fields of fire, coordinated coverage, displacement after shots. It's very effective against conventional forces who don't understand the pattern. But you understood it. Yes, ma'am, because I've studied it. She looked up, finally meeting Morgan's eyes. And because I don't think like a Marine Scout sniper or even like most special operations snipers, I think like an enemy sniper. I understand their decision trees, their tactical psychology. Once I see their pattern, I can predict their positions and exploit their coordination against them. Alexandra's superiors had never quite understood what made her so effective. Some attributed it to instinct, others to exceptional technical skill. But what truly set her apart was something her father had taught her long before she'd ever put on a uniform. A deer doesn't know it has a pattern, he'd told her once sitting by a campfire in the Montana wilderness, stars bright overhead. But every living thing does. Humans have patterns too, especially professionals. The more training they have, the more predictable they become. Alexandra had asked him how that could be true. Shouldn't training make someone less predictable? Training creates consistency, he'd explained. Consistency creates patterns. Patterns create predictability. That's why the best hunters don't just look for their prey. They look for the patterns their prey doesn't know they have. That wisdom learned in the mountains of Montana tracking deer and elk had saved 18 American lives today. Because 6 highly trained enemy snipers, men who had terrorized an entire company of Marines, hadn't understood the fundamental truth of their profession. In the world of precision killing, predictability is fatal. Morgan pulled up Alexandra's classified file, the parts she was cleared to see. The tactical display had been replaced with redacted military records, performance evaluations, and mission summaries that told a story of exceptional skill and unorthodox methodology. Your SOTIC instructors wrote that you have an almost supernatural ability to predict enemy sniper behavior and positioning, Morgan said, scrolling through the file. Your Delta Force evaluator said you think like the enemy better than anyone they've ever seen. Your last unit commander wrote that you're the most effective counter-sniper asset in the U.S. military. Alexandra shrugged slightly, continuing to clean her rifle with practiced efficiency. I just understand how snipers think, ma'am. Most people don't realize that snipers are very predictable. We're trained to follow specific tactical doctrines to position ourselves according to specific principles. Once you understand those principles, you can predict behavior. You say we're trained like you're one of them. I am one of them, ma'am, Alexandra replied, looking up. I'm a sniper. I just happen to specialize in hunting other snipers. I understand them because I am them. I just think one step further ahead. Morgan studied her for a long moment. Walk me through it. How did you identify all 6 positions so quickly? Alexandra set down her cleaning rod and came to the screen. First principle, enemy snipers using coordinated overwatch aren't randomly positioned. They follow a tactical geometry, overlapping fields of fire, mutually supporting positions, escape routes planned. She pointed to the map. 6 shooters covering one bomb intersection means they need 3 primary positions with backup positions for each. I identified the 3 buildings that gave them best coverage, northeast, southeast, and west. Then I looked for backup positions within displacement range, which gave me northwest, east, and south. But how did you know someone was in each position without seeing them? Process of elimination and pattern confirmation. When I had Charlie 6's men draw fire, I tracked which positions responded. 2 shots meant 2 primary positions activated. The others stayed quiet, proper discipline, but their silence confirmed they existed. If there were only 2 snipers, they'd both have fired to maximize suppression. Morgan studied the timeline. You killed the first one under suppressive fire. They never knew he was hit. Correct. I needed to eliminate at least 2 before they realized they were being counter-sniped. Once I got the first 2, the others went into defensive mode, which made them predictable. They'd either try to reposition or exfiltrate. I covered both options. The last one was waiting for Yusu. Yes, ma'am, he was the smartest. He understood someone was hunting them and tried to reverse the hunt. But he made a tactical error. He prioritized finding me over maintaining position security. When I gave him a target he thought would draw me out, he couldn't resist trying to spot me. That's when he exposed his position. Morgan sat back impressed. 18 minutes, 6 enemy snipers who'd been pinning down an entire company, and you made it look easy. It wasn't easy, ma'am. It was pattern recognition, tactical prediction, and execution. The same process I'd use for any counter-sniper operation. How many times have you done this, operations like this, I mean? Alexandra was quiet for a moment. This was my 7th multi-target counter-sniper mission. Previous record was 4 targets in 23 minutes in Afghanistan. Today's 6 in 18 is a personal best. Alexandra's mind drifted back to that Afghanistan operation. The mountain pass, the Taliban ambush, the 4 snipers hidden among the rocks. That had been different, less coordinated opposition, more rugged terrain. But the principles had been the same. Understand the enemy's tactical doctrine, predict their positions, exploit their patterns. Across her deployments, she'd faced enemy snipers from various backgrounds. Russian-trained, Iranian-supported, former military, gone mercenary. Each had their own tactical signature, but they all shared the same fundamental weakness. They'd been trained to follow rules. Rules created patterns. Patterns created predictability. The Pentagon's going to want a full briefing on your methodology, Morgan said, breaking Alexandra's reverie. This could change how we train our counter-sniper units. Alexandra nodded. I'd be happy to put something together. In the meantime, Morgan continued, get some rest. You've earned it. As Alexandra left the TOC, she felt the familiar post-mission calm settling over her. No adrenaline crash, no second guessing. Just the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. 6 men who'd been trying to kill Americans were dead, and 18 Marines who would have died were alive. The calculus was clean. Outside, the Syrian sun beat down mercilessly. The air smelled of dust and distant gunfire, normal for this part of the world. Alexandra made her way to the barracks, her rifle case slung over her shoulder. She'd sleep for 4 hours, then write her report. The routine never varied. She'd just reached her quarters when a voice called out behind her. Hey, Ghost Lady. Alexandra turned. A Marine Scout sniper stood there, tall and lean, desert camouflage still dusty from the field. Staff Sergeant James Connor, one of the 3 who'd been trying to counter the enemy snipers before she'd arrived. Don't call me that, she said flatly. Word travels fast around here, Connor said, ignoring her objection. 6 enemy snipers in 18 minutes. I'd call that impossible, but I saw the bodies myself when we swept the buildings. Alexandra said nothing, waiting for him to get to the point. Thing is, he continued, me and my team were working those positions for almost an hour. Couldn't get a single confirmed kill. Then you show up and take them all down before lunch. His tone was difficult to read, not quite hostile, not quite respectful. How'd you do it? Pattern recognition and tactical prediction, she replied, the same answer she'd given Morgan. They were using a standard Russian doctrine. Once I understood their deployment geometry, I could predict their positions and behaviors. Connor's eyes narrowed slightly. Just like that. Just like that. We're not idiots, Reynolds. We know Russian doctrine too. I didn't say you were idiots. I said I recognized their pattern. Different skill set. Connor studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Maybe, or maybe you just got lucky. He turned to leave, then paused. Either way, you saved a lot of Marines today. That counts for something. As he walked away, Alexandra felt a familiar tension settle between her shoulder blades. She'd encountered this reaction before, the mixture of gratitude and resentment, respect, and disbelief. Special operations was still predominantly male, and being a woman who excelled in one of its most technical disciplines meant constantly navigating these waters. Connor's skepticism wasn't unique, nor was it entirely unfounded. What she did often looked like luck to outside observers. How could she explain that it wasn't luck at all, but the result of a lifetime spent thinking differently about predator and prey relationships? How her father had taught her to see patterns where others saw only chaos. 6 months earlier, during a joint operation in eastern Ukraine, Alexandra had been paired with Connor for a high-priority target, A Russian general was scheduled to visit frontline positions, and their mission was to eliminate him before he could return to Russian territory. Intelligence had pinpointed the general's route, and Alexandra and Connor had set up in an abandoned factory overlooking the convoy's expected path. They'd waited for 14 hours. When the convoy finally appeared, something had felt wrong to Alexandra. The vehicles were moving too fast, security was too light. She'd voiced her concerns to Connor, who had dismissed them. Intel says he's in the lead vehicle, he'd insisted. Take the shot. Alexandra had refused. It's a decoy, she'd said. The real convoy will come later from a different direction. We need to reposition. Connor had overruled her. He'd taken the shot himself, hitting the passenger in the lead vehicle. It wasn't the general, just as Alexandra had predicted. Worse, the shot had compromised their position. Enemy counter-snipers had zeroed in on them within minutes. During their hasty extraction, Alexandra had taken a round through her left shoulder. The wound had healed, but the experience had left its mark. After that, Connor had avoided her, and Alexandra had made no effort to bridge the gap. Some lessons had to be learned the hard way. Inside her quarters, Alexandra locked her rifle case in the footlocker and laid down on the narrow bunk. Sleep would come quickly, as it always did. She'd learned to rest whenever possible, another habit her father had instilled in her. Sleep when you can, eat when you can, he'd told her during her first hunting trip, because you never know when you'll get another chance to do either. Her father, John Reynolds, 20 years Delta Force with scars that told stories he never shared. He'd raised her alone after her mother died of cancer when Alexandra was just 4 years old. Too young to remember much about her beyond the scent of lavender and a soft voice reading bedtime stories. After that, it had just been the two of them in their cabin outside Bozeman, Montana. Her childhood had been unconventional by any standard. While other girls her age were playing with dolls or learning ballet, Alexandra was learning to track deer through mountain forests, to read wind patterns in tall grass, to wait motionless for hours as the sun arced across the sky. Patience, her father had always said, is a predator's greatest weapon. By 16, she'd been able to hit targets at 1,000 meters with her father's custom Remington 700. By 18, she could track any animal through any terrain, could predict its movements based on subtle signs most people would never notice. When she'd enlisted in the Army at 19, the recruiter had asked about her hobbies. Hunting, she'd said simply. If he'd understood what she really meant, he might have fast-tracked her straight to special operations. The Army had recognized her potential quickly. After basic training and sniper school, she'd been selected for SOTIC, an honor usually reserved for operators with years of experience. There, her instructors had quickly realized she wasn't just another skilled shooter. Her ability to predict enemy behavior and positioning during exercises was uncanny. It's like she can read their minds, one instructor had written in her evaluation. Not minds, patterns. Sleep claimed her as these thoughts drifted through her consciousness. 4 hours of deep, dreamless rest, another skill she'd mastered. Then she'd wake, write her report, and wait for the next mission. Because there was always another mission. The sound of helicopter rotors woke her exactly 4 hours later. Alexandra sat up instantly alert. Her watch confirmed she'd slept precisely as long as she'd intended. Outside, the light had shifted, the harsh midday sun giving way to the softer glow of late afternoon. She changed into fresh fatigues, secured her weapon, and made her way back to the TOC. Morgan was still there, looking as if she hadn't moved since their last conversation. The tactical display now showed a different area of operations farther north along the Syrian border. Perfect timing, Reynolds, Morgan said as Alexandra entered. We've got a situation. The display zoomed in on a small border village. Red markers indicated U.S. Special Forces positions. Yellow markers showed suspected enemy locations. 12-man ODA team conducting village stabilization operations, Morgan explained, referring to an operational detachment, Alpha, a Special Forces A-team. They've reported enemy sniper activity in the area. 2 team members wounded in the last 24 hours. They've requested counter-sniper support. What do we know about the enemy sniper? Alexandra asked, studying the terrain. Single shooter from what they can tell. Long-range shots 800 to 1,000 meters. Professional. Team leader thinks it might be a Russian military advisor or contractor. Alexandra nodded. A singleton. Different tactical problem than this morning. Exactly. This isn't a coordinated team with interlocking fields of fire. This is one highly skilled shooter playing hit and run. Team can't pinpoint the position since shooter displaces after every engagement. When do I leave? Wheels up in 30 minutes. Blackhawk will insert you 5 kilometers from the village. You'll rendezvous with the ODA team leader at this grid coordinate. Morgan pointed to a location on the map. Call sign is Dogwood 6. Alexandra studied the terrain again. Unlike the urban environment of the morning operation, this was rural rolling hills, scattered trees, open farmland. Different environment, different challenges. But the core principle remained the same. Understand the enemy's snipers, tactical psychology, predict his pattern, exploit his tendencies. Any other background I should know, she asked. Morgan hesitated. The ODA team leader is Captain William Mitchell. Alexandra's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. I know the name. I thought you might. He was in eastern Ukraine 6 months ago. With Connor. Yes. Morgan watched her carefully. Is that going to be a problem? No, ma'am, it won't affect the mission. Morgan studied her for a moment longer, then nodded. Good. Because this sniper's already put 2 of Mitchell's men in the medevac. He needs your help, whether he knows it or not. 30 minutes later, Alexandra was airborne again, watching the Syrian landscape roll beneath her. The helicopter flew low, following the contours of the land to minimize detection. In her mind, she was already analyzing the problem. A singleton sniper operating in rural terrain was a different tactical challenge than a coordinated team in an urban environment. Singletons had advantages, greater mobility, smaller signature, less predictable patterns. But they also had weaknesses. Without a team, they had no one covering their movements. Without coordinated fields of fire, they had to choose positions that offered both concealment and escape routes. Most importantly, singleton snipers tended to develop personal habits. Favorite types of positions, preferred engagement distances, distinctive shot timing. These habits became their signature, their pattern. And patterns could be predicted. The helicopter set her down in a dry riverbed. Alexandra moved quickly away from the landing zone, establishing a covered position to observe the surrounding terrain. Once satisfied the area was secure, she began her 5-kilometer approach to the rendezvous point. Moving through hostile territory alone was second nature to Alexandra. She flowed from cover to cover like water finding its path downhill, efficient, silent, invisible. Her senses were heightened, registering every detail, the direction of the wind, the behavior of local birds, the texture of the ground beneath her feet. 2 hours later, she reached the rendezvous point, an abandoned farmhouse on a small rise. From here, she could see the village in the distance, nestled in a shallow valley. Perfect sniper territory, elevated positions all around, multiple approaches, plenty of cover. A figure materialized from the shadows of the farmhouse, tall, broad-shouldered, bearded. He wore no insignia but the custom HK-416 rifle, and the way he moved marked him as Special Forces. Reynolds, he asked quietly. That's me. Captain William Mitchell, Dogwood 6. He didn't offer his hand. Follow me, we've got a command post set up inside. The farmhouse's interior was Spartan but functional. Maps covered one wall, communications equipment another. 3 other operators were present, monitoring radios and cleaning weapons. They nodded to Alexandra but didn't introduce themselves. Special Forces operators weren't known for being talkative with outsiders. Mitchell pointed to the map. We've been running stabilization ops in the village for 2 weeks. 3 days ago, we started taking sniper fire. Long range, highly accurate. 2 of my men hit one through the shoulder at 800 meters, one through the leg at just over 950. Both shots came from different firing positions. Professional, Alexandra noted. Very. We've had counter-sniper elements scanning the likely positions, but this guy is good. Shoots and moves. Never fires from the same position twice. Russian, Quosi. Mitchell shrugged. Possibly. We've intercepted some Russian comms in the area. Could be Spetsnaz or GRU. Could be a contractor. Either way, he's disrupting our operations and endangering the local population. Alexandra studied the map, noting the terrain features, the lines of sight, the natural observation points. Already her mind was building a model of the enemy sniper's likely behavior. Has he shown any pattern in target selection? She asked. Mitchell considered this. Now that you mention it, yes. He seems to prioritize targets that appear to be leaders, anyone giving directions or talking on a radio. And he prefers shots in early morning or late afternoon. Alexandra nodded. This was useful information. The sniper was selecting high-value targets and choosing times when the light gave him advantages. Classic trained behavior. I need to see the positions he's fired from. Mitchell raised an eyebrow. We've already checked them thoroughly. Nothing useful. I'm not looking for physical evidence, Alexandra replied. I'm looking for pattern confirmation. Something flickered across Mitchell's face, skepticism perhaps, or grudging curiosity. All right, we can head out at dawn, too risky after dark. One more question, Alexandra said. Is he shooting to kill? Mitchell seemed surprised by the question. What do you mean? Both your men were wounded, not killed. Were those shots center mass that the men survived, or were they peripheral hits? Peripheral, Mitchell admitted after a moment's thought. Neither shot would have been immediately fatal even without medical attention. Alexandra filed this information away. A sniper who could hit targets at 950 meters could certainly make kill shots if he wanted to. The fact that he wasn't suggested something interesting about his tactical objectives. He's not trying to rack up a body count, she said. He's trying to disrupt your operations, create fear, force you to devote resources to counter-sniper efforts. Mitchell studied her with new interest. That's actually a good assessment. We've been so focused on trying to catch him that we've had to scale back our primary mission, which is exactly what he wants. Alexandra unfolded her own map. Show me where your men were hit and what direction the shots came from. For the next hour, they analyzed the incidents in detail. Alexandra asked precise technical questions about shot angles, wind conditions, victim positioning, and nearby cover. As the picture built, she began to see the outlines of the enemy sniper's methodology. He's using elevated positions all between 800 and 1,000 meters from the target area, she noted. Always with multiple escape routes, always with good cover to his rear. That's just good sniper practice, Mitchell pointed out. Yes, but it's specific good sniper practice, Alexandra countered. He's prioritizing distance and escape over optimal firing positions. A different type of sniper might choose closer positions with better shooting angles, but more risk of detection. This guy's cautious, patient, willing to take only shots he's very confident in. She traced a finger along the map. Based on these shot origins, in the terrain I can identify 7 likely positions he hasn't used yet. If his pattern holds, his next firing position will be here. She tapped a small hill about 900 meters from the village. Mitchell looked skeptical. That's a pretty confident assessment from limited data. It's pattern recognition, not confidence, Alexandra replied evenly. Snipers follow tactical doctrines they've been trained in. Those doctrines create behavioral patterns. Once you understand the doctrine, you can predict the behavior. And if you're wrong, then I adjust the model and try again. She folded her map. But I'm not wrong. This isn't guesswork, Captain. It's tactical psychology. Mitchell studied her for a long moment. Ukraine, he said finally. 6 months ago, you were the female sniper who refused to take the shot. Alexander met his gaze steadily. I was the sniper who correctly identified a decoy convoy, yes. Connor took the shot. The mission was compromised. Yes. You were wounded during extraction. Yes. Mitchell's expression was unreadable. Connor said you got spooked, that you choked when it came time to pull the trigger. Alexander didn't respond immediately. There was no point arguing about Connor's interpretation. The facts spoke for themselves. The after-action review concluded the primary target was not in the convoy, she said finally, exactly as I assessed. The mission failed because we engaged a decoy, not because I refused to fire. Mitchell held her gaze a moment longer, then nodded slightly. Fair enough. We'll check out your predicted position at dawn. If you're right, we'll set up a counter-sniper operation. I'll need a ghillie suit in 24 hours to prepare a hide position, Alexander said. Once I'm in place, have one of your men create a target of opportunity in the village. Someone who looks like they're in charge talking on a radio in an open area. The enemy sniper won't be able to resist. You want to use one of my men as bait. With proper precautions, yes. Body armor, concealed position, apparent exposure. The enemy sniper needs to believe it's a viable target, but your man will be in minimal actual danger. Mitchell considered this, then nodded slowly. We can arrange that, but this better work, Reynolds. I'm not risking my people on a hunch. It's not a hunch, Alexandra said with quiet confidence. It's tactical prediction based on behavioral pattern analysis. The enemy sniper has shown us who he is through his choices. Now we use that against him. The next morning, Alexandra and Mitchell made their way through the pre-dawn darkness to the hill she had identified. Moving silently through the terrain, they found exactly what Alexandra had predicted, a perfect sniper position with clear lines of sight to the village, multiple escape routes, and good concealment. "Well, I'll be damned," Mitchell murmured as they surveyed the spot. Perfect setup, natural depression for prone positioning, rock formation for cover, clear view of the main thoroughfare. And signs of recent reconnaissance, Alexandra added, pointing to subtle disturbances in the soil and vegetation. "Someone's been here within the last 24 hours checking sight lines and distances. Not disturbed enough for a full firing position setup, but definitely scouting." Mitchell looked impressed despite himself. "You really can read the terrain." Not just the terrain, the sniper. Alexandra was already surveying the surrounding area. "I need to set up about 200 meters back with clear line of sight to this position. The shooter will arrive before dawn tomorrow. Set up and wait for a target of opportunity. When he takes his shot, I take mine." For the next several hours, Alexandra prepared her position with meticulous care. The ghillie suit was essential, the specialized camouflage designed to break up the human outline and blend with the surrounding vegetation. She'd learned to make her first ghillie at 14, another skill her father had passed down. "Animals don't see like humans do, so," he'd explained as they'd attached strips of burlap and local vegetation to a base suit. "They don't look for faces or limbs. They look for outlines and movement. Break up your outline, control your movement, and you become invisible." The same principles applied to counter-sniper operations. The enemy would be scanning for threats, but he'd be looking for human shapes and movements. The ghillie suit would defeat his expectations. By mid-afternoon, Alexandra's hide was complete, a shallow depression, reinforced with local vegetation, perfectly positioned to observe the enemy sniper's expected arrival point without being visible from any angle. She would spend the night here motionless, patient. Tomorrow, when the enemy arrived, she would be waiting. 24-hour surveillance, she told Mitchell as he prepared to leave. "No movement, no communication unless absolutely necessary. The target will likely arrive before dawn, spend several hours in reconnaissance, then set up for a mid-morning shot when your men are most active in the village." Mitchell nodded. "We'll have Sergeant Jackson create a target of opportunity at 900. He'll be wearing body armor and will only appear exposed from the sniper's angle. Actual risk is minimal." "Perfect. One shot, one opportunity. When the enemy sniper reveals his position to take that shot, I'll take mine." As Mitchell departed, Alexandra settled into the patient stillness that was the sniper's true art. Most people couldn't comprehend the level of physical control required to remain motionless for hours, even days. The discipline to control breathing, to ignore discomfort, to maintain focus through boredom and physical strain. This was where Alexandra excelled. Her mind entered a state of alert meditation, simultaneously relaxed and hyper-aware. She could maintain this state indefinitely, her consciousness expanding to encompass every detail of her surroundings, while her body remained perfectly still. Night fell, stars appeared. Nocturnal creatures emerged to hunt and forage, oblivious to the human predator in their midst. Alexandra registered it all while remaining as motionless as the stones around her. Hours passed, the temperature dropped. Still, she didn't move. Before dawn, Alexandra detected the first sign of her quarry, a slight disturbance in the natural sounds of the environment. Not a noise, but the absence of noise. The momentary silence of small creatures sensing a predator. Then nothing. If she hadn't been specifically waiting, specifically trained, she would have missed it entirely. The enemy sniper was good, very good, moving with such skill that even Alexandra, watching for him specifically, could barely detect his presence. But he was there, setting up in exactly the position she had predicted. In the growing light, she caught glimpses through her scope, a shadow moving against shadows, vegetation shifting against the wind. Nothing a casual observer would notice. But to Alexandra's trained eye, it was like watching someone move in broad daylight. The enemy sniper settled into his hide. Professional, methodical, patient. He began his pre-engagement ritual, checking sight lines, ranging distances, calculating wind and elevation. Alexandra could almost hear his thoughts, could predict his movements before he made them, because she had done the same ritual hundreds of times herself, because she knew the pattern. This was what her instructors had called her supernatural ability. This was what her evaluators had struggled to explain. This intimate understanding of the predator's mind, born from a lifetime spent studying patterns of behavior. Alexandra didn't just know what the enemy sniper would do, she knew why he would do it, could feel his reasoning as if it were her own. Through her scope, she watched him complete his preparations. A professional hunter, confident in his skills, unaware that he had become the hunted, unaware that his training, his doctrine, his habits had made him predictable to someone who knew how to look. The sun rose higher in the Syrian sky, painting the landscape in stark contrasts of light and shadow. In the village below U.S., Special Forces operators moved through their morning routines. To casual observation, they appeared relaxed, almost careless. But Alexandra knew better. This was choreography, a performance designed to draw out their hunter. The enemy sniper remained perfectly still in his hide, exactly where Alexandra had predicted he would be. Through her scope, she could see the occasional glint of his optics as he scanned the village below. Patient, methodical professional. He was waiting for the perfect shot just as she was. At precisely 0900, Sergeant Jackson emerged from a building in the village center. He moved with purpose, radio in hand, gesturing occasionally as if giving orders to unseen subordinates. From the enemy sniper's position, he would appear to be a perfect high-value target, exposed and vulnerable. In reality, he wore body armor beneath his uniform and moved within a carefully planned safe zone visible from the sniper's position, but protected by the angles. Through her scope, Alexandra saw the enemy sniper make his final adjustments. Wind direction, elevation, target distance, breathe control. The ritual was familiar, almost intimate, like watching herself in a mirror. She could take her shot now. The enemy was fully focused on his target. His awareness narrowed to the small world visible through his scope. He was at his most vulnerable. But Alexandra waited. She wanted to see his shot to confirm her understanding of his methodology before she ended the engagement. The crack of the enemy's rifle echoed across the valley. Through her scope, Alexandra saw Jackson react, clutching his shoulder and dropping to the ground. The shot had found the edge of the body armor, a perfect disabling hit without being immediately fatal. Exactly the pattern she had predicted. Now it was her turn. The enemy sniper was already moving, breaking down his equipment with practiced efficiency. He had a 3-second window to take his shot, gather his rifle, and begin his exfiltration. Most counter-snipers would miss this window, would arrive at an empty position with nothing but brass casings to show for their efforts. But Alexandra wasn't most counter-snipers. She had been waiting for precisely this moment, had predicted it down to the second. Her crosshairs settled on the enemy's position. She controlled her breathing, found her natural respiratory pause, and squeezed the trigger. Through her scope, she saw the impact. The enemy sniper's body jerked, then collapsed. A perfect shot at 100 meters. Target neutralized, she murmured into her radio, moving to confirm. She disengaged from her hide with careful precision, ensuring that no one else was watching from another position. 20 minutes later, she reached the enemy sniper's location. The man lay crumpled beside his partially disassembled rifle. Russian-made SVD Dragunov, customized for long-range precision. Quality equipment for a quality operator. Alexandra knelt beside the body. Male, mid-30s, compact build, military haircut. No identification, no insignia, no nationality markers. But the equipment told its own story. Russian optics, Russian ammunition, Russian tactical harness. A professional soldier or contractor, almost certainly with Spetsnaz training. She keyed her radio. Confirmed kill, Russian operator, no identification. Professional equipment, advanced training. He was alone. Roger that, Mitchell's voice replied. Jackson took a hit, but the armor caught most of it. Flesh wound to the shoulder. He'll be fine. Return to base. Alexandra gathered intelligence from the enemy position, ammunition-type equipment, details, anything that might help identify the sniper's unit or affiliation. Then she made her way back to the farmhouse, moving through the landscape like a shadow passing through shadows. At the command post, Mitchell was waiting with his team. Their attitude had changed subtly. The skepticism was gone, replaced by a quiet professional respect. Jackson sat on a crate, his shoulder bandaged, his expression a mixture of pain and relief. Clean shot, Mitchell said as she entered. Right through the collarbone, just like you predicted. Enough to take me out of action, but not kill me outright. Pattern confirmation, Alexandra replied. It matched his previous engagements exactly. And your shot? Mitchell asked. 1,100 meters target already moving. That's exceptional marksmanship. Alexandra shrugged slightly. I had time to prepare. Proper position, known distance, predictable target behavior. The fundamentals apply at any range. Mitchell studied her for a moment, then nodded toward a map spread on a nearby table. We ID'd him based on the equipment you recovered. Artem Sokolov, former Spetsnaz, now private contractor working for Russian military intelligence. He's been operating in this region for 6 months, disrupting coalition operations. Alexandra looked at the file. The man had an impressive record. Multiple deployments, advanced training, confirmed kills across several conflict zones. A true professional, and yet his training had made him predictable to someone who understood the patterns. What happens now? She asked. We continue our mission, Mitchell replied. With Sokolov eliminated, we can resume normal operations. The village stabilization program continues. He paused, then added, Good work, Reynolds. I owe you an apology for my skepticism. No apology necessary, Captain. Professional caution is always warranted. Mitchell seemed about to say more when the radio crackled to life. Dogwood 6, this is Overlord. Priority transmission. He grabbed the handset. Dogwood 6, send traffic. The voice on the radio was clipped urgent. New intelligence indicates high-value Russian asset inbound to your AO within 24 hours. General Viktor Baranov, GRU Military Intelligence, conducting field assessment. Priority target if opportunity presents. Details to follow on secure channel. Mitchell's eyes widened slightly. He acknowledged the transmission, then turned to his team. Secure the room, classified briefing. Once his operators had established security, Mitchell turned to Alexandra. You're not officially assigned to this operation, so I should send you back to base. But after what I just saw, he hesitated. We could use your expertise. Alexandra understood what he was offering. This wasn't just inclusion in a high-priority mission. It was professional redemption, a chance to correct what had happened in Ukraine. A second opportunity at a Russian high-value target. What do you need me to do? She asked simply. Mitchell pulled up a secure tablet. General Viktor Baranov, head of GRU Special Operations for the Middle East Theater. Career military intelligence, former Spetsnaz commander. He's been coordinating Russian proxy operations throughout Syria for the past 3 years. The tablet showed a stern-faced man in his 50s, silver-haired, hard-eyed, wearing a Russian general's uniform laden with medals. The kind of high-value target that intelligence agencies dreamed of accessing. Why would someone at his level risk a field visit? Alexandra asked. That's what makes this interesting, Mitchell replied. Baranov rarely leaves Moscow. When he does, it's for something critical. Intelligence suggests he's coming to assess a new weapon system being deployed through Russian proxies in the region. Something the Pentagon is very interested in. What's the mission profile? Surveillance primarily. Get eyes on Baranov, confirm his presence, document his activities and contacts. If an opportunity presents itself, we're authorized for capture or elimination, but that's not the primary objective. Alexandra studied the intelligence briefing. Baranov was expected to arrive by helicopter at a secured compound 10 kilometers north of their current position. He would remain for approximately 12 hours before departing. Security would be heavy, professional, and alert. This is a significant opportunity, Mitchell continued, but also high risk. Baranov will have top-tier security counter-surveillance, the works. Getting close enough for visual confirmation without being detected will be extremely challenging. I can do it, Alexandra said quietly. Mitchell raised an eyebrow. Confident assessment. Not confidence. Capability assessment. I've conducted long-range surveillance on secured compounds before. With proper preparation, I can get close enough to document Baranov's activities without detection. Mitchell considered this. If you're compromised, it could trigger an international incident. The U.S. officially has no combat troops in this region. We're here in an advisory capacity only. I won't be compromised. Something in her tone must have convinced him. Mitchell nodded slowly. All right, you'll lead the surveillance element. Jackson's out of commission with that shoulder wound, so I'll assign Peterson to accompany you as security. He gestured to one of his operators, a compact, weathered man with watchful eyes. Master Sergeant David Peterson nodded acknowledgement to Alexandra. She recognized the type immediately. Experienced, professional, minimal ego. someone she could work with effectively. "We move at dusk," Mitchell said. "Get your equipment ready and study the intelligence package. Peterson will brief you on the approach routes and fallback positions." For the next several hours, Alexandra immersed herself in preparation. She studied satellite imagery of the target compound, memorizing sight lines, cover positions, and approach angles. She cleaned and checked her rifle, prepared her ghillie suit with local vegetation, and packed her surveillance kit. As she worked, her mind kept returning to Ukraine, to the failed operations 6 months earlier. The parallels were unmistakable. Another high-value Russian target. Another opportunity that might not come again. Another chance to apply her unique methodology to a critical mission. Last time her assessment had been correct but overruled. This time would be different. Mitchell had seen what she could do. He would listen if she raised concerns. At dusk, Alexandra and Peterson moved out. They traveled light, carrying only essential equipment. Their approach would take them through rugged terrain, avoiding roads and open areas where Russian surveillance might detect them. "Mitchell briefed me on your counter-sniper operation this morning," Peterson said as they moved through the gathering darkness. Predicting the shooter's position like that, then waiting for him to reveal himself. That was impressive work. "Just applied methodology," Alexandra replied. "Enemy snipers follow tactical doctrines they've been trained in. Those doctrines create behavioral patterns. Once you understand the doctrine, you can predict the behavior." Simple as that. Simple in concept, complex in execution. Peterson considered this as they navigated through a rocky ravine. "You know, I was in Ukraine last year. Different AO than your operation, but same general scenario. Russian activity, high-value targets, counter-sniper concerns." Alexander said nothing, waiting for him to continue. "We had a situation similar to yours," he went on. "Intelligence identified a convoy carrying a Russian general. My team leader wanted immediate engagement. I advised caution, said something felt wrong about the intelligence. He overruled me." Peterson paused. "3 good men died when that convoy turned out to be a trap." Alexandra glanced at him. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Mitchell told me what happened in your Ukraine operation. How you refused to take the shot because you believed it was a decoy convoy. How Connor overruled you and compromised the mission." He met her gaze in the darkness. "You were right, and I respect that you stood by your assessment even when pressured." The acknowledgement was unexpected. Alexandra hadn't been seeking validation, but hearing it from an experienced operator like Peterson carried weight. "What happened afterwards?" she asked. "With your team in Ukraine?" "Investigation cleared my team leader of wrongdoing. Said he made a reasonable decision based on available intelligence. But every operator who survived knows the truth. He ignored warning signs because he wanted the mission success too badly. Confirmation bias in action." "And how did that affect your team dynamics?" Peterson's expression hardened slightly. He never acknowledged the mistake. Maintained it was just bad luck, not bad judgment. Lost the team's trust after that. You can't lead effectively when your people don't trust your decision-making. They fell silent as they approached more exposed terrain. The conversation had revealed something important about Peterson. He valued sound judgment over ego, would speak up when he saw problems. That made him a valuable partner for this mission. By midnight, they had reached their observation position, a rocky outcropping with clear sight lines to the compound 900 meters from the target. Close enough for effective surveillance, far enough to minimize detection risk. The compound itself was well lit, with guards patrolling the perimeter and vehicles parked inside the walls. Alexandra set up her observation post with methodical precision. Thermal imaging camera, digital SLR with telephoto lens, directional microphone. All secured and camouflaged to prevent detection by counter-surveillance measures. "Baranov's helicopter is scheduled to arrive at 0600, Peterson whispered as they settled into position. "We maintain surveillance until he departs, then exfiltrate along the eastern route." Alexandra nodded, her attention already focused on the compound. Through her thermal scope, she could see the heat signatures of the guards, their patrol patterns, the warm engines of recently arrived vehicles. Already her mind was building a model of the security operations, identifying patterns and potential vulnerabilities. Multiple technical vehicles, she noted. Heavy weapons mounted, professional security posture. These aren't local militias. Trained personnel, likely Russian private military contractors or special forces advisors. Peterson adjusted his own optics. I count 16 personnel on active security. Four-man teams rotating shifts. Standard Russian security doctrine for high-value protection. Exactly, and Alexandra replied. And like all doctrines, it creates predictable patterns. She studied the guard rotations for several more minutes. The Eastern approach has a blind spot during shift changes. If we needed to get closer, that would be the vector. You think we'll need to move in? Hopefully not, but always plan for contingencies. The night passed slowly. They took turns on active observation, documenting security procedures, vehicle movements, personnel rotations. By dawn, Alexandra had compiled a comprehensive assessment of the compound's security posture. Professional, thorough, but with the small, predictable gaps that all security systems inevitably contained. At 0545, they heard the distant thrum of helicopter rotors. Incoming aircraft, Peterson murmured. Bearing 030. Through her binoculars, Alexandra tracked the approaching helicopter. Russian Mi-8 military configuration, no markings. Standard transport for high-ranking officers in unsecured territory. That's our target, she confirmed. Arrival pattern consistent with VIP transport protocols. The helicopter circled the compound, once a security procedure to check for threats, then descended into a cleared area inside the walls. Guards formed a protective cordon as the rotors slowed. Alexandra's camera clicked rapidly, capturing high-resolution images of the scene. When the helicopter door opened, a small delegation emerged. Men in suits and uniforms, moving with the purposeful efficiency of military officials. Visual confirmation, she whispered. Third figure, gray, hair, black overcoat. Through her telephoto lens, General Baranov's face was clearly recognizable, matching the intelligence photographs. He moved with the confident authority of a man accustomed to command, flanked by aides and security personnel. Target confirmed, Peterson agreed, transmitting secure notification to Mitchell. For the next several hours, they maintained continuous surveillance, documenting Baranov's activities inside the compound. Through windows and in outdoor areas, they captured images of meetings, document reviews, and what appeared to be a weapons demonstration in a secured courtyard. Some kind of new missile system, Alexandra noted, focusing her camera on the hardware being displayed. Man-portable advanced guidance package. Definitely not something that should be in this region. Pentagon will want those images, Peterson replied. That could be the new anti-aircraft system intelligence has been tracking. By mid-afternoon, their surveillance had yielded a comprehensive record of Baranov's activities. The general had met with local commanders, inspected the new weapon system, and reviewed operational plans displayed on large tactical maps. He's preparing to depart, Alexandra observed as activity around the helicopter increased. Security posture changing to extraction protocol. Peterson checked his watch. Right on schedule. We've got what we came for. Primary mission accomplished. But as they watched the preparations, Alexandra noticed something unusual. A new vehicle had arrived at the compound, a black SUV with tinted windows. From it emerged a figure that caused her to freeze. New arrival, she said, her voice tense. Western male civilian clothes, moving with military bearing, being greeted with high-level protocol. Peterson focused his optics. Unexpected. Intelligence didn't indicate any other VIPs in the area. Alexandra zoomed her camera, capturing the man's face as he turned to speak with a Russian officer. Something about him seemed familiar, triggering a distant recognition. I know him, she said slowly. Not personally, but from intelligence briefings. That's Michael Crane. Former U.S. Special Forces, went private sector 10 years ago. Rumored to have sold classified tactical information to foreign interests. Peterson tensed. A traitor meeting with Russian military intelligence, that's significant. Very. Alexandra agreed, capturing more images. And completely unexpected. This changes the mission parameters. They watched as Crane was escorted into the main building, clearly a welcomed and anticipated guest. 10 minutes later, he emerged alongside Baranov, the two men conversing with the easy familiarity of long-term associates. They know each other well, Alexandra noted. This isn't their first meeting. Mitchell needs to see this immediately, Peterson said, his voice tight with urgency. A known U.S. security risk meeting with Russian military intelligence in a secure compound. That elevates this from surveillance to critical intelligence gathering. Alexandra continued documenting the interaction, her mind racing through the implications. Crane's presence suggested something far more complex than a routine weapons assessment. If he was providing American tactical knowledge to the Russians, it could endanger U.S. forces throughout the region. "They're heading for the helicopter," she reported. "Both of them, Baranov and Crane, boarding together." Peterson was already on the secure radio, updating Mitchell with the new developments. His voice was low tense with controlled urgency. "Understood," he said, finally signing off. "New orders. Mission parameters expanded. We are to maintain surveillance on both targets. If Crane separates from Baranov, we follow Crane." "Makes sense," Alexandra agreed. "Crane is the unexpected element. Intelligence will want to know where he goes, who he contacts." The helicopter rotors began turning their rhythmic thump, carrying across the distance. Security personnel maintained their protective cordon as the aircraft prepared for departure. "Wait," Alexandra said, suddenly focusing her telephoto lens. "Something's wrong." Through her optics, she could see a new tension in the security posture. Guards who had been focused outward were now looking at the helicopter. Baranov was gesturing angrily at one of his aides. "Mechanical issue," Peterson suggested. "Maybe the helicopter can't depart." But Alexandra's instincts were signaling something else. The pattern had changed. The ordered procedure of a VIP extraction had shifted to something more urgent, more improvisational. "This isn't mechanical," she said, her voice tight. "Their behavior indicates a security alert. They've detected something." As if confirming her assessment, the guards suddenly began moving with tactical purpose, forming new positions, scanning the surrounding terrain with increased intensity. "They're looking for something," Peterson murmured. "Or someone." "Or they've found something," Alexandra replied, a cold certainty settling in her stomach. "We need to move, now." They had just begun packing their surveillance equipment when the first mortar round impacted 50 meters from their position. The explosion sent rock fragments spraying across their hide dust, billowing into the air. "They've got our position," Peterson hissed, grabbing his rifle. "Counter-surveillance must have picked up our electronic signature." Another mortar round closer this time. Professional bracketing fire walking the impacts toward their location with methodical precision. "Eastern exfiltration route," Alexandra said, slinging her rifle across her back. "Move fast, maintain spacing. They'll have QRF already deployed to intercept." They abandoned non-essential equipment and began moving rapidly through the rocky terrain, staying low, using natural cover to break line of sight from the compound. Behind them, more mortar rounds impacted their former position, destroying what remained of their observation post. "Mitchell, this is Peterson," he called into his secure radio as they ran. Contact, position compromised, multiple hostile elements. Executing emergency exfiltration protocol echo." "Peterson, Mitchell, understood. QRF deploying to your fallback position. ETA 30 minutes. "May not have 30 minutes, Peterson replied grimly. "Significant hostile presence mobilizing." Alexandra moved with the fluid efficiency of someone who had done this before, navigating the difficult terrain without hesitation, selecting routes that maximize cover while maintaining their eastward progression. Her mind was calm, tactical, focused entirely on the immediate problem of survival and exfiltration. Behind them, the sound of vehicles and shouting carried through the dry air. The Russian security forces were in pursuit, moving with the coordinated precision of professional operators. Not the disorganized response of local militias, but the methodical deployment of trained personnel executing a prepared contingency plan. "Vehicle approaching from the south," Alexandra warned, her keen senses detecting the engine noise before it became visible. "Technical with mounted weapon. We need to divert north, use the ravine for cover." They changed direction, pushing toward a deep natural cut in the landscape that would shield them from both observation and direct fire. The ravine would slow their progress, but offer protection from the pursuing forces. "How did they detect us?" Peterson asked as they slid down the ravine's steep side. "We maintained emissions discipline, proper concealment protocols. Professional counter-surveillance," Alexandra replied, already scanning for the next movement route. "Possibly with advanced technical capabilities." Or what?" She hesitated. "Or they knew we were coming." Peterson's eyes narrowed. "You think we were compromised before the mission even began?" "It's a possibility we have to consider." The security response was too quick, too coordinated, almost as if they were expecting counter-surveillance. They moved rapidly along the ravine floor, keeping close to the shadows cast by the steep walls. Above them, the sound of vehicles continued, searching teams deploying to cover likely exfiltration routes. Mitchell needs to know, Peterson said. If there's a compromise, the entire operation could be at risk. Agreed, Tim. But first we need to reach the fallback position. Communications can wait until we're secure. And they continued eastward using natural terrain features to mask their movement. Alexandra let her senses heighten to an almost supernatural degree. Every sound, every shift in the air, every distant movement was processed and analyzed. This was the hunter's awareness, the predator's focus applied now to their own survival. After 20 minutes of rapid movement, they reached a rocky outcropping that offered momentary shelter and a vantage point to assess the pursuit. Alexandra pulled out her compact binoculars and scanned the terrain behind them. Multiple search teams, she reported. 4 vehicles, at least 16 personnel. They're executing a standard search grid pattern working eastward from the compound. Professional methodology. Peterson checked his GPS. Fallback position is 3 kilometers northeast. If we push hard, we can make it before they close the gap. They'll be expecting us to head directly for the fallback, Alexandra pointed out. It's the logical exfiltration route. So we don't take the logical route, Peterson concluded. Which way? Alexandra studied the terrain, her mind automatically processing routes, sightlines, cover options. South first, then east, then north. Longer distance, but better concealment. We use the dry riverbed, then the abandoned village, then approach the fallback from the west instead of the south. Peterson nodded. Unconventional approach. Might work. He keyed his radio. Mitchell Peterson, position still compromised. Executing alternate approach to fallback. Delay QRF until confirmation of secure arrival. Understood, Peterson. Be advised, satellite shows significant hostile activity in your AO. Multiple vehicles, dismounted personnel. Proceed with extreme caution. They moved out again, changing direction to implement Alexandra's strategy. The southern route took them away from the most active search patterns, using a dry riverbed that provided both concealment and relatively easy movement. If they are tracking our communications, Alexandra said as they moved, they'll be converging on the fallback position, expecting us to arrive from the south or east. Coming in from the west gives us the best chance of avoiding their cordon. Peterson nodded. Good tactical thinking. Unconventional approaches often succeed where standard procedures fail. As they moved through the increasingly familiar terrain, Alexandra felt a growing sense of unease. Not about the pursuit that was a known quantity, a problem with defined parameters and solutions. This was something else, a pattern recognition at a deeper level. We've been in this exact situation before, she said suddenly. Peterson glanced at her. What do you mean? High-value Russian target, surveillance mission, unexpected elements, compromised position, rapid exfiltration under pressure. She met his gaze. Ukraine, 6 months ago. Understanding dawned in Peterson's eyes. You think this is connected? I think it's a pattern, Alexandra replied. And patterns are rarely coincidental. They fell silent as they approached the abandoned village Alexandra had identified as their next waypoint. Once a small farming community, it now stood empty, its mud brick buildings crumbling under the desert sun. Perfect temporary cover for their movement east. As they entered the village, Alexandra's instincts flared again. Something was wrong. The silence was too complete, the emptiness too perfect. She held up a hand, stopping Peterson in his tracks. Wait, she whispered. Something's not right. Peterson froze his rifle ready, trusting her assessment without question. They listened, scanning the dilapidated structures around them. The ambush came from 3 directions simultaneously. Figures in tactical gear emerged from concealed positions. Weapons raised, moving with the disciplined precision of professional operators. Down, Alexandra shouted, diving for cover as the first shots rang out. They rolled behind a crumbling wall as bullets impacted around them. Not wild suppressive fire, but controlled precise shooting from trained personnel. 4 hostiles. Alexandra reported calmly, her mind automatically cataloging the threat. 2 north, 1 east, 1 south. Professional operators, tactical formation, synchronized assault. Peterson was already returning fire, his movements economical and precise. These aren't standard security forces. These are special operations personnel, Spetsnaz or equivalent. Alexandra leaned out briefly, fired 3 rapid shots, then ducked back as return fire chipped away at their cover. They predicted our route. This isn't a random search pattern intercept. They knew exactly where we'd be. Compromise mission parameters, Peterson agreed grimly. Someone knew our contingency plans. They were pinned down, outnumbered, facing professional operators who had established tactical superiority. The textbook response would be to find a defensive position, hold out, and wait for QRF to arrive. But Alexandra knew that approach would fail. The enemy had too many advantages, too much information. Standard procedure won't work here, she said, her mind racing through alternatives. They'll be expecting it. We need to do something unpredictable. Peterson glanced at her. I'm open to suggestions. Alexandra studied the village layout, the enemy positions, the available routes. As always, her mind processed the patterns, found the gaps, identified the opportunities that others would miss. They've established a cordon expecting us to move outward, she said. But what if we move inward instead, toward the center of the village, then underground through the old irrigation tunnels? Peterson's eyes widened slightly. How do you know about irrigation tunnels? Village this size, this region would have had a central water system with maintenance access. The entrance will be near the old well in the village center. It was a gamble based on pattern recognition rather than concrete intelligence. But in this situation, unconventional approaches offered the best chance of success. Worth a shot, Peterson decided. On my mark, suppressive fire north, then we move south through the buildings, working our way to the center. Alexandra nodded, positioned her rifle, and waited for his Martin signal. Mark, they opened fire simultaneously, forcing the northern hostiles into cover, then broke from their position, moving rapidly through the narrow alleyways between buildings. The enemy responded quickly, adjusting their cordon, but the momentary disruption gave Alexandra and Peterson the opening they needed. Moving from cover to cover, they worked their way toward the village center, where a dried-up well stood as a relic of more prosperous times. As they approached, Alexandra scanned the ground around it, looking for the signs she expected to find. There, she said, pointing to a small stone structure near the well. Maintenance access point. They reached it just as enemy fire began to impact around them again. The heavy stone cover took two of them to move, revealing a narrow shaft with rusted metal rungs leading down into darkness. I'll go first, Alexandra said, slinging her rifle and beginning the descent without hesitation. The tunnel below was narrow, dusty, and dark. The air was stale but breathable. Ancient brickwork lined the walls, remarkably preserved in the dry climate. As Peterson joined her, sealing the access point behind them, Alexandra clicked on her tactical light, revealing a passage leading away from the village. These systems typically follow the natural water table, she explained, already moving forward. This one should head southeast toward the seasonal river. How far? Peterson asked, his voice echoing slightly in the confined space. Half kilometer, maybe more. Enough to clear their cordon if we're not detected. They moved rapidly through the ancient tunnel, navigating by Alexandra's tactical light and Peterson's compass heading. Above them, muffled by earth and stone, they could hear the sounds of the search continuing, the enemy still unaware of their underground escape route. After 20 minutes of careful progress, the tunnel began to slope upward. Ahead, a faint light indicated another access point. Careful, Alexandra warned. They may have personnel watching exit points. They approached the opening cautiously, Alexandra taking point. The access shaft was similar to the one they'd entered, leading up to what appeared to be another stone cover. She climbed the rungs slowly, listening carefully for any sound that might indicate hostiles nearby. At the top, she pressed gently against the cover. It moved slightly, revealing a sliver of daylight. She paused, listening, then slowly pushed it aside enough to peer out. They had emerged in a dry stream bed half a kilometer southeast of the village, well beyond the enemy cordon. No sign of hostiles in the immediate vicinity. Clear, she whispered down to Peterson. We're outside their search perimeter. They emerged cautiously, securing the cover behind them to hide their escape route, then immediately sought concealment among the rocks lining the stream bed. New heading to fallback position, Peterson asked, checking his GPS. Alexandra considered their options. If the mission is compromised, the fallback may be too. We should make direct contact with Mitchell. Confirm the situation before proceeding. Peterson nodded and keyed his secure radio. Mitchell Peterson, SITREP engaged hostile special operations elements. Evaded using unconventional route. Current position secure. Request situation update before proceeding to fallback. The radio crackled with static, then Mitchell's voice came through, tense and urgent. Peterson Mitchell, mission parameters compromised. Multiple hostile elements converging on fallback position. Primary exfiltration canceled. Proceed to secondary extraction point Delta. Authentication code Sierra Echo Victor Echo November. Peterson exchanged a look with Alexandra. The authentication code confirmed the transmission was legitimate, but the situation had clearly deteriorated significantly. Roger Mitchell, proceeding to Delta, ETA 3 hours. Peterson out. He turned to Alexandra. Secondary extraction point is a remote airstrip 20 kilometers east. Helicopter pickup, direct return to base. No intermediate stops. Alexandra nodded, already calculating routes, timing potential threats. We move fast, stick to terrain features for concealment, approach the airstrip from the north where observation is limited. As they prepared to move out, Peterson hesitated. Reynolds, what you said earlier about patterns, Ukraine 6 months ago now, this. Both operations targeting Russian high-value assets, both compromised in similar ways. Both with unexpected civilian elements involved, Alexandra added. In Ukraine, it was the decoy convoy I identified. Here it was Crane's presence at the compound. You think Crane could be the connection, the compromise source? Alexandra considered this. It fits the pattern. Former U.S. Special Forces rumored to have sold classified information. If he's working with Russian intelligence, he'd have access to operational methodology, contingency planning, standard procedures, which would explain how they anticipated our movements so precisely, Peterson concluded. They knew exactly what we would do because Crane told them exactly what we're trained to do. And if that's true, Alexandra said, then this mission was never about surveillance. It was about drawing us in, using Baranov as bait to lure U.S. Special Operations personnel into a trap. The realization landed heavily between them. If true, it meant the entire operation had been compromised from the beginning. Worse, it suggested a level of counterintelligence sophistication that posed a significant threat to all U.S. operations in the region. Mitchell needs to know, Peterson said grimly. This goes beyond our immediate situation. It could affect every operation in theater. We tell him at extraction, Alexandra replied. For now, we focus on reaching Delta, one problem at a time. The journey to extraction point Delta took them through increasingly rugged terrain. They moved quickly but cautiously, avoiding open ground and maintaining vigilant awareness of potential pursuit. Alexandra led, selecting routes that balanced speed with security, always mindful of the patterns enemy search teams would follow. As dusk approached, they crested a ridge that gave them a clearer view of the extraction point, a small concealed airstrip cut into a flat stretch of terrain barely visible against the surrounding landscape. No vehicles or personnel were visible exactly as it should be for a covert extraction site. Looks clear, Peterson murmured, scanning the area through his binoculars. No signs of hostile presence. Let's not assume anything, Alexandra replied. She studied the surrounding terrain, looking for any anomalies or irregularities that might indicate an ambush. We approach from the north as planned, using the ridgeline for cover. Final assessment at 300 meters before committing to the landing zone. Peterson nodded. Agreed. Mitchell's transmissions indicated the extract bird is on station, holding at safe distance until our arrival signal. They began their final approach, moving with heightened caution. The stakes were higher now. They carried critical intelligence about a potential compromise that could affect operations across the entire theater. Getting this information back to command was paramount. As they reached their final observation point, Alexandra conducted a methodical scan of the extraction site. Everything appeared normal, but something nagged at the edge of her awareness. A pattern that wasn't quite right. See anything? Peterson asked, sensing her hesitation. Nothing specific, she admitted, but something feels off. She focused on the southern end of the airstrip where a small cluster of maintenance buildings provided the only vertical elements in the otherwise flat landscape. The buildings. There should be heat signatures from small animals, rodents, birds, insects, but my thermal is showing nothing. Complete absence of wildlife. Peterson's expression tightened. Recent human activity could have cleared them out. Exactly. Alexandra shifted her position slightly, changing her angle of observation. I want to check something before we commit. She studied the ground around the maintenance buildings, looking for the subtle signs that would confirm her suspicion. There, a faint line of disturbed soil, barely visible in the fading light, the kind of disturbance created when a tripwire is installed. They've prepared a welcome, she said quietly. Classic ambush setup. Trip lines around the perimeter probably connected to claymores or similar. Main force likely concealed in or behind the maintenance buildings with overwatch positions on the surrounding high ground. Peterson swore softly. How did they know about Delta? It's not even in our standard contingency planning. It's a backup to the backup. Crane, Alexander replied simply. If he's been feeding information to the Russians, he would have access to that level of operational detail. This confirms our theory the entire mission was a setup from the beginning. So what's our move? Peterson asked. We can't call for extract with a hot LZ, and we can't stay here. Alexander considered their options, mind racing through scenarios and countering them. They needed to get the intelligence back, but they also needed to stay alive to deliver it. And now that they knew Crane was potentially compromised, they had to assume all standard protocols were as well. We need to change the equation, she said finally. Use their own trap against them. What do you have in mind? They're expecting us to approach the airstrip directly. That's where they've set their ambush. But what if we give them a different target? She pointed to a rocky outcropping about a kilometer to the west of their position. We set up a diversion there, something to draw their attention and fire. While they're focused on that, we move to the extraction point from an unexpected direction. Peterson thought it through, then nodded slowly. Could work. What kind of diversion? A thermal signature that mimics two humans. We can use our emergency blankets wrapped around heated rocks. When they detect the heat signatures, they'll assume it's us setting up an observation position before approaching the airstrip. And when they investigate, we'll be coming in from the east instead of the north, Peterson finished, hitting the extraction point from a direction they haven't covered. Exactly. They worked quickly preparing the decoy heat signatures and placing them among the rocks of the western outcropping. Once satisfied with the setup, they began a wide, circuitous route that would bring them to the eastern edge of the airstrip, the opposite direction from their prepared ambush. 2 hours later, they were in position. Through her thermal scope, Alexandra could see movement around their decoy. The enemy had taken the bait, dispatching a team to investigate the heat signatures on the western outcropping. Now, she whispered. They moved quickly across the open ground, staying low using the darkness for concealment. When they reached the edge of the airstrip, Peterson keyed his radio. Whiskey Delta, this is Echo Actual. LZ is compromised, but we've created a window. Request immediate dust-off east side of strip, no lights, minimal ground time. Authentication code Foxtrot 79er Tango. There was a brief pause, then a response. Echo Actual Whiskey Delta. Authentication confirmed. Inbound your position, ETA 3 minutes. Be ready to move fast. They waited in tense silence. In the distance, they could hear sporadic gunfire as the enemy team engaged their decoy position, still unaware of their true location. The diversion was working, but it wouldn't last long. The helicopter appeared suddenly, skimming low over the terrain, running dark. It touched down just long enough for Alexandra and Peterson to sprint aboard, then immediately lifted off, banking hard to the east to avoid the most likely enemy firing positions. As they gained altitude, Alexandra looked back to see muzzle flashes from the airstrip. The enemy had finally realized they'd been outmaneuvered. But it was too late. The helicopter was already beyond effective, small arms range, disappearing into the night sky. It's a helicopter, a communications officer handed them secure headsets. Command needs immediate debrief, he shouted over the rotor noise. Priority Alpha, we're diverting to the carrier group in the Mediterranean rather than returning to base. Admiral Harrington is waiting. Peterson looked at Alexandra with raised eyebrows. Admiral Harrington was the theater commander. The direct involvement of an officer at that level indicated just how seriously command was taking their intelligence. 4 hours later, they were seated in a secure briefing room aboard the USS Eisenhower, facing a panel of senior intelligence and military officials. Admiral Harrington, a stern-faced woman with steel-gray hair and piercing blue eyes, sat at the center. Staff Sergeant Reynolds, Master Sergeant Peterson, she began without preamble. Your intelligence regarding Michael Crane has been preliminarily corroborated by other sources. We believe you've uncovered a significant counterintelligence issue. I need every detail from the beginning. For the next 2 hours, they provided a comprehensive briefing, everything from the initial sniper elimination to the surveillance of Baranov, the appearance of Crane, and their subsequent evasion and extraction. Alexandra explained her theory about the pattern of compromised operations and how Crane's presence suggested a deeper problem. When they finished, Harrington was silent for a long moment, studying the classified file in front of her. "Your assessment is sound," she said finally. "This isn't the first operation compromised in this manner, but it's the first time we've had eyewitness confirmation of Crane's direct involvement with Russian military intelligence. This changes things significantly." She turned to one of the intelligence officers. "What's the status on Crane's current whereabouts?" "Unknown, ma'am," the officer replied. After departing the compound with Baranov, their helicopter headed northeast toward Russian-controlled territory. "We lost tracking after they entered Russian airspace." Harrington nodded, then turned back to Alexandra and Peterson. "Your actions today have potentially saved numerous American lives. If Crane has indeed been compromising operational security, the extent of the damage could be substantial. We're initiating a full counterintelligence investigation, reviewing every operation he might have had knowledge of." She paused, studying Alexandra with newfound interest. "Staff Sergeant Reynolds, your file indicates a rather unique skill set. This pattern recognition methodology you employed both against the sniper and in anticipating the enemy's ambush tactics, it's not standard training." "No, ma'am," Alexandra replied. "It's a combination of personal experience and specialized training." "It's exceptional," Harrington said flatly, "and exactly what we need for a matter that's recently come to my attention." She slid a classified folder across the table. "I'm temporarily reassigning you to JSOC Counterintelligence Task Force Delta. Your mission will be to help identify other potentially compromised operations and develop countermeasures based on your pattern recognition methodology." Alexandra opened the folder. Inside was a preliminary brief on a new task force being formed specifically to address the Crane situation and its implications. Her name was already listed as a key technical advisor. "And Crane," she asked, looking up from the file. "He's now Priority Target Alpha," Harrington replied, her expression grim. "Finding him, determining the full extent of his activities, and neutralizing the threat he poses is now our highest priority in this theater. And given your unique abilities, Staff Sergeant, I suspect you will play a significant role in that operation when the time comes." Alexandra nodded. The pattern was expanding and becoming more complex but still recognizable. Crane had made a critical error in showing himself at the compound. Like all predators who grew too confident, he had revealed a pattern that could now be exploited. And patterns, as she well knew, were the key to successful hunting. "I understand, Admiral," she said simply. "When do we start?" "Immediately," Harrington replied. "The task force is assembling as we speak. You'll be briefed on the full operational parameters once we return to headquarters." She stood, signaling the end of the meeting. "Get some rest. You're going to need it." As they left the briefing room, Peterson fell in beside Alexandra. "Quite a turn of events," he observed, "from counter-sniper to counterintelligence in less than 48 hours. "Just another pattern," Alexandra replied. "Different application and same principles." Peterson smiled slightly. "You know, when this is all over, I'd be interested in learning more about this methodology of yours. Might come in handy." "It takes years of practice," Alexandra warned, "and a certain way of seeing the world." "I've got time," Peterson said, "and after what I've seen you do, I'm willing to learn." Alexandra considered this. Throughout her career, she had largely worked alone, trusting her own instincts and assessments above others. But Peterson had proven himself both in his willingness to trust her judgment and in his own competence under pressure. Perhaps it was time to share some of what her father had taught her. "We'll see," she said, not committing but not refusing either. "First, we need to catch Crane." "And we will," Peterson replied with certainty. "He has a pattern, too. He just doesn't know you're hunting him yet." Alexandra nodded. Crane was trained, experienced, and now operating with the resources of Russian intelligence behind him. But he had made the most fundamental error a predator could make. He had revealed himself. And in the world of shadows, visibility was fatal. As they made their way to their assigned quarters, Alexandra felt a familiar sense of purpose settling over her. The hunt was changing, expanding, but the fundamentals remained the same. Understand the target, identify the pattern, exploit the predictability. Crane thought he was the hunter, manipulating operations from the shadows, playing both sides against each other. But he had never faced someone like Alexandra Reynolds, someone who had spent her entire life learning to see what others missed, to understand what others overlooked, to predict what others never anticipated. The enemy believed they were hunting her. But as her father had taught her long ago in the mountains of Montana, True hunters are never hunted. They simply allow their prey to believe they're in control right until the moment the trap closes. And Alexandra was very, very good at closing traps.